movie in espresso. So today we're going to be doing some more custom videos. I've got a couple lined up. I've got 3 currently, I've got 2 that are made, and I've got another one that's in the works. But today we're going to be starting another sort of brief series of customs. I don't know, we'll see if we get any more at some point. But we're going to be starting off with the Mandrel from the Season 17 story, The Nightmare of Eden, which isn't a particularly well-favoured story among fans, but I really like it. So we're going to have a look at this custom figure. So yeah, to start off with, let's talk about how it looks against the other figures, because I've got my lovely Tom Baker, Lala Ward, and K9 B&M figures. Yes, they're all B&M figures, because I don't have the money to buy Forbidden Planet exclusives. But anyway, so, although I don't think there is a Forbidden Planet exclusive. I know there is. There's a Season 18 one, which would be handy if I had with the other custom that I made, given that it's from Season 18. But apart from that, they look great together, I think, to be honest. I really like the way the Mandrel has come out, in my opinion. I think it's one of my favourite customs I've done so far, and I think it looks great next to the new Romana figure as well, and have that sort of Season 17 sort of line-up from that story as well. I mean, they're not the accurate costumes, but I mean, I don't know, maybe we will get a Romana from Nightmare of Eden. Who knows? We'll hope. I'd definitely like to see some more Romana variants, but today we're going to be talking about the Mandrel custom. So now that we've had a look at it together with the action figures, let's have a closer look at the actual figure. So here we have the Mandrel figure, or I should probably say Mandrel statue really, because it's not exactly got any articulation or anything, but apart from that, it is basically a custom figure. So to start off with, I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up. So here we have the lovely sort of, I don't know if you can tell in person, but there is a sort of polystyrene texture to the bottom of the feet. That's because I actually made this on top of some polystyrene. Yes, I am still working my way through polystyrene that I filled inside these figures from the very beginning. I don't even know when I started doing these customs, but I'm still working my way through those massive lobs of polystyrene that I have no idea what to do with. So again, as I'll get to earlier, there is polystyrene inside this thing. We come to our first inaccuracy as we come up to the legs. For example, they're probably not as big as they should be. They also don't have fur because they're that short, so I didn't have enough space to add in that detail. Then we got up the body, and you got more of these lovely sort of leathery sort of, I don't know, scales, and they kind of glisten in the light, as you can see there. And I think this was really well. I spent an entire day just sort of moulding out sort of little Cocoa Pop shaped like scales. And I really like that. I think there was something I noticed about some of the later costumes from Tom's era and going into the 80s is how costume based they were compared to sort of big sort of machine like monsters like the Crotons or the, I don't know, the Daleks for one as well, and the War Machines and stuff. They're all big robotic ones, but these are sort of more costume based. In fact, I believe the other costume that I made is actually designed by June Hudson instead of actually the sort of usual design team you get for this. Okay, and then of course moving up to the arms, we've got some claws, which aren't quite the right colour, but I wasn't really sure what colour to make them. They probably could have done with it being a bit longer and a bit sharper, but apart from that, I think they work quite well. You got the fur here, which sort of looks a bit odd when you come to the return of the scales there, which is another reason why I didn't want to do it down here, because I don't think it'd work very well, because it hadn't really worked here, because it looks a lot thinner there, a lot thicker there, where it's in the actual prop, it's actually like thicker there and thinner there, because that's the actual arm there, whereas this is just the fur. And then you got the lovely, I think it did work at the top here, but that's because I think I added that a lot better, and then I obviously sculpted in the fur there and there as well to try and get that fur blending effect there. And of course you got the back, we've got the sort of mohawk on the back there, which I've tried to replicate as best as I can. And I'm quite happy with the way I've sort of moulded the fur to the fur from the head to the fur from the body. I think if you look at it obviously long enough, you'll see where the two meet. But I think if you were just looking at it on camera like I think you are, I don't know, you can sort of see there, but apart from that, I'm quite happy with the way that I blended the two together to sort of make it look like one piece, which I'm quite happy with. Even if it hasn't got any articulation, at least I've got the sort of accurate sort of melding of the sort of fur there. Of course, you got these lovely sort of tendrils, which I could never figure out what they were. And around here, you would actually have the face, or if you were Lee Binding, if you were doing the DVD art for The Nightmare of Eden, where you can infamously see the faces of the actors who are wearing the costumes, but I have removed that detail, so you can no longer see the actor's face there, but they're sort of round by the tendrils here, sort of very ood-like there. Actually, I'm quite happy. I think that's come out a lot. I think that's the thing I was most concerned about, not being able to get that to work quite well, but I think it's come out quite nicely. And then you've got the lovely sort of piercing green eyes there, and the sort of lovely sort of giant eyebrows, I guess, and the lovely textured scale effect there. So, to sort of, before we get into how I briefly made this, I'm going to say I do think this is one of my favourite customs I've done. I was really quite happy with this. I don't know if it's just because I was all by myself when I made this, but maybe that it was a contributing factor, because the other one I made all by myself. So maybe it's I don't know. I think there are a lot of things I'd love to add that I don't think I'll be able to add. I'm not going to pretend to be this great customizer, because I haven't nearly had anywhere near as much experience as some people on YouTube. So, like, I think if you were to look at my first custom that I posted a video on, which would be, if I remember rightly, Alpha Centauri, I think I've come a long way since Alpha Centauri, and that was probably about, I don't know, I think it was the first holiday of lockdown that I did that, when we were all just sat home with no work and I didn't know what to do, and that was the first custom I did. So I think I have come a long way from not actually having an actual back to the back of it and using sort of just a painted loo roll with a bit of milliput on the top. But, you know, I think it's sort of a long journey, and we'll probably get into this a bit. I don't know if I'll make any more post-lockdown, I don't know if I'll have the time post-lockdown, but yeah, I think I'm really happy with this one, particularly the way it looks with the rest of the figures. And also, you can sort of make it look a bit more like an actual figure if you've got the Famazi there as well. So, I just told you. I was going to keep that a secret. Now, I'm just going to be blunt. My next custom is the Famazi. We'll get to that in another future video. But yeah, for now, now let's have a quick look at how I made this figure. So, here we come to my first sort of photograph of the making of this sort of figurine, I guess. It's not really a figure, is it, I guess? But yeah, this custom figurine, I'm going to call them. It sounds more posh as well, figurine, doesn't it? I should probably stop saying figurine now, but yeah, anyway. Moving on to figurine. So this is the first photo I got of it. I like taking these photos sort of just as a guideline, and sort of it kind of keeps me in touch with my art, because that's sort of very similar to the way I do my art sort of overview, I guess. But so this was the first photo, and as you can see, I've started off with a loo roll base, and then obviously fill that with polystyrene, because I have no idea what to do with it, so I'm just using it as filler to sort of even out the space there. And then I put a bit of tape on the top, a bit on the bottom, and then I just sculpted the first of the feet there. I basically just got a bit of milliput, and I kind of gave up on putting polystyrene inside of it, so I've just decided to bite the bullet and just put a bit of milliput on there, sort of milliput. So yeah, that's probably the most expensive bit of milliput there, because the rest is all evened out and very thinned. I've always tried to make it as thin as possible, but also as accurate, and make it look as sort of monstery as I can. But sometimes I just have to just, you know, make it as thin as possible, as some of my customs are frighteningly aware of. But here you can also see I've started to add the scales to the legs there as well, and I sort of added them afterwards. I let the feet dry first, so that although they did sort of fall off a little bit, I was able to sort of make sure that they stuck on properly after adding the scales, so that was helpful as well. So for photograph number 2, you can see that I've also started to, that's where I've started to add the sort of leathery sort of scales there, and I've added them up the body up to the top near enough, and then I got on to doing the sort of feet after they'd dried. So that was also because I thought it'd probably help the figures, the feet stick on like more solidly, so that helped as well to do the body first. Otherwise I was just going to sit there and watch it dry, which is sort of boring. So yeah, that's what I did that. So, photograph number 3, you can sort of see how I've added a lot more detail here. You can see the arms. Originally I was just going to sort of go with my nail and try and make these sort of scaly-like shapes, but it doesn't really look right. It just sort of looks like a carrot. I don't know. It's sort of got those sort of markings of a carrot, the sort of roundness of a carrot, so I just sort of scrapped. Actually, no, not carrot, parsnip, which is evil. never eat a parsnip. I'm sorry to everyone who loves parsnips. I'm sure there are people, but I don't personally. But that didn't work, so I sort of decided to go over it with the scales eventually. And then, of course, I think you can, I don't know, you can also start to see the fur at the top of the head. I added the fur to the sort of, well, not the top of the head because the head isn't there yet. You can see the fur where I've started to put the fur at the hemway of the top of the body there as well, which I started to sculpt on, as well as the claws. So yeah, that's just sort of about nearly completed the sculpt there, but not quite. And here you can just sort of see the mohawk there sculpted on. It sort of reminded me of the Absorbaloff, actually. The Absorbaloff has a giant mohawk there. I don't know how accurate that was. I was sort of trying to look at how the fur sort of divided itself among the body, and there isn't many photos of the back of the Mandrel, so I had to rely on the model that I can't remember who did it now, but it was a professional company. Harrop, there you go, Robert Harrop, the Robert Harrop model. I often use Robert Harrop models when I'm sculpting something like a Yeti or something like this. I don't actually own one, I just saw look at pictures on the internet and sort of wish that I owned one, but yeah, that's sort of where I got that source from. And in this one, you can see where I've just about sculpted on the first sort of 4 fronds that are sort of hanging off the top of, well, the top of the body, the sort of chest. I don't really know what they're for, but they exist, so yeah. Next up, you can see where I've just begun to sculpt the head, and I'm sorry to disappoint people. Yes, I did indeed put polystyrene inside there. That is not entirely milliput, unlike the feet this time. You can also see it sort of looks ghostly like that, sort of without the mouth. It sort of looks quite creepy, but sort of soulless as well because of the massive eyes. And you can also see the giant, I don't know, are they eyebrows? They sort of look like eyebrows. They're not very bushy, but they're kind of weird alien eyebrows, I guess. But yeah, there you can see I've just sort of also had to sculpt the bottom of the hair at the bottom of there to sort of sculpt that onto the fur as well. Then we have another lovely shot of a Mandrel's backside, sorry. But yeah, there's the head. You can see I sort of sculpted. That's where I've had to sculpt on that lovely fur texture there as well. I'm quite pleased with the fur texture. I'm quite happy with that, how that came out. I think it's a long way from the fur texture of my Yeti, which sort of didn't quite work as well as I would have hoped. Then here we have the actual finished completed sculpt, which I left overnight to sort of dry, to sort of give it time to sort of come together as an entire piece there. And we've got the fronds added there, the weird sort of ood-like fronds. You've also got the sort of, I think it looked quite nice as a simple sculpt before it got painted. I mean, if it was completely green, I would have been happy with it, but I thought as a pure sculpt, I think a lot of detail has been lost since I painted it. I mean, as much as I love it painted, I kind of think that a lot of the detail has been lost because of all the thick layers of paint that I've added to it. But yeah, apart from that, I think I'm quite happy with how the sculpt came out. Okay, so here is a picture of the Mandrel after its sort of first coat of paint, and as you can tell, it's not completely sort of, didn't get all the detail in. I think a lot of the detail wasn't completely, I probably could have gone over with the smaller details that I sort of can't quite get into the corners with my paintbrush, but I mean, I have this really tiny brush and it's just like, it just won't reach. I've tried. Anyway, but yeah, so I've used acrylic paint here. I sort of used lots of different tones I sort of mixed the brown and the black, sort of dark black to get that sort of leathery feel. Also mixed in a bit of red to sort of get, because it's the sort of costume is sort of reddish brown that I tried to replicate here. I don't know if that necessarily came through in the finished product, but it definitely looks very leathery, which is sort of the idea. And then the fur has obviously been painted black as well, which I think really has sort of come out quite well. I'm quite pleased with how that came out. And the eyes, of course, they're glowing green. They definitely needed a couple more coats before I took the picture. Sorry, past me is a bit of an idiot. He didn't take the picture at the right time. But never mind. Here he is, sort of after his first coat. And here is your final picture of the Mandrel's backside. Yes, some very weird statements going on here today. But here is the final sort of added paint to it. And that's sort of basically what you saw earlier. I don't know if it's quite dried though. You can also see my art homework there. And the millions of packets of milliput to the side there. This is completely sculpted in milliput as well. So yeah, that is basically it for the how I made it. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Leave some feedback down below, and I hope you sort of have a nice idea of how roughly I made this. I mean, I'm not going to be as in detail as I would like to be because I don't really know what I'm doing. But apart from that, I hope you enjoyed this video, and basically just generally thanks for watching, and enjoy the rest of whatever day it is. I don't know, it could be evening, could be night, so I'm just going to say enjoy your day. Anyway, bye! Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Hovian Espresso YouTube channel.